Tonight, greetings, fellow travelers. As the week reaches its thrilling midpoint, we're broadcasting from the mountains of West Virginia. Embrace the spirit of adventure as you join us on this daring journey through the untamed wilderness of Let's Find Out with Diego. Bonus Overdrive Wednesday.
It's time to find out with Diego. Let's go. Ooh, yeah.
On this episode of Bonus Overdrive Wednesday, our guest hails from the Old Dominion, where the Bunnyman legend thrives. His short stories are a unique blend of the weird and the unusual, with his mind behind collections like Jamie's Closet and the Golem and Other Stories. But it's not just his prose that will haunt you. His award-winning poetry, including his latest collection, Catacombs, a collection of horror poetry. He also actively explores abandoned places, embracing dark tourism, and indulging his fascination with graveyards and cemeteries. All this plus more. Please welcome a good friend to our show, one half of the Killer Bees, author Bryn Grover. Bryn, my friend, welcome to Bonus Overdrive Wednesday.
Hey, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. And a shout out to the Killer Bees, too. So the other half is Brian Nowak, by the way. So just so I can give the second half of the Killer Bees.
Oh, yeah. Brian the writer. What a fun guy to be around. And I saw him the other day, actually, a few weeks ago at a Snarly Yow event. And
one of the, like,
we had a lot of fun.
Cryptid something or other, right?
I believe it was it halfway to Halloween?
Maybe.
Berryville, something like that.
Yeah.
And great stuff as always. He, like I said, always fun to hang out with. He always hangs out with that lab coat. He was it Dr. Acula?
Dr. Acula, yeah. And he took his Dr. Acula show on the road too when we were at Horror on Main recently. So, I mean, I had to go ahead and wear a vampire cape in order to try to keep up with him a little bit.
No, you guys always great to talk to. And we, not long ago, you and I, we caught up with lunch. We went to somewhere in Winchester, and we had some great conversation that day, my friend. But before I continue the story, I know that even right before we had lunch, you were already out there exploring.
I was. I mean, I wasn't exactly sure where we were going. I mean, I had the address, GPS, and all that stuff, right? But I figured I would get there a little bit early. And probably, I don't know, half a mile or less away from there is an old Quaker graveyard. It's surrounded by a stone fence, which has no entrance, with the exception of they've kind of built stepping stones into the stone wall. So you would step on one, kind of work your way up 3 stones on one side, throw a leg over, and come down 3 stones on the other side. Well, I'm a little bit too old to want to do that unless that's my only way in. So I walked around the place, and back on the back end where a railroad track is, part of the wall had fallen down. So I was able to, just walk in on moderately level ground without any kind of climbing. But yeah, I'm always out doing that kind of stuff. I love, I put up posts called File Tuesdays. I love exploring graveyards and cemeteries. You always find something cool. And at that one that I went to just before we met, they had a lady, I want to say her name was Elizabeth, off the top of my head. I'm not 100% sure, but her tombstone had said she had died from falling off of a horse. So I'm like, you don't really see that nowadays. And most obituaries, if they even have one, it'll just say, Brian passed away, his family was by his side, but don't tell you why. Did he have cancer? Was he in a car wreck? Nowadays, they don't give you any kind of information, but some of these old headstones give you a lot of interesting history that you can find. So it's kind of fun for me to explore. And on occasion, the Killer Bees will go out together to these places, with an EMF reader, seeing if we can pick up anything interesting, ghost hunting, so to speak. So I figured I'm coming to see you. I might as well stop and see a graveyard I hadn't seen before. It's a little unique and old. So yeah, that's the kind of weird stuff I do.
But I think if I were to, I guess, man, a lot of these explorations that you do, whether you're with Brian, the other Brian, Brian the writer, or whether you're by yourself, a lot of these things you go out there, you explore. Like you say, you learn about the causes of their death, or you learn the history of the cemetery or the locations. Do some of these, I want to say, investigations or these field trips that you take, does a lot of that influence your writing?
I think it does because, like in the Jamie's Closet collection of books, for example, the very first story in there is called "Commandant's Problem," and it kind of begs the question of what's more evil or than a Nazi concentration camp commandant. You'd be hard pressed to really figure something like that out, right? Because that's about top of the line evil. But the genesis of it really comes from having lived in Europe and done additional touring of Europe, in more recent years where I've been to multiple concentration camps, to get a firsthand look at the history. In fact, my background right now, if it's showing on your end, I don't know what you're seeing, but that building behind me is Auschwitz-Birkenau 2. It's the entrance where the trains would come in, and Jewish and Romani and Russian prisoners and whatever would be sent to the gas chambers at the other end of the railroad track. So the experience of being in Dachau really was the very first concentration camp I'd ever been in, and that's the one that kind of helped inspire that particular story. Like, what's this, as evil as this is, and as bad as this is, and as much as it needs to be remembered, what did they fear? What's more evil? So it kind of gets your imagination flowing from a perspective of writing, weird fiction or horror type stories. So yes, it does play into that, and not in every story, but in a lot of them.
Then also including well, because or your love of B movie horror as well.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and so I think when you take the history, you take the influence from the B movie horror or sci-fi, I think you get a pretty good background, which gives you some ideas of where you're going to go with certain things. And not long ago, I started I binge watch sometimes things, and sometimes I go cold. The trail goes cold because honestly, I've already seen everything there is to see. And sometimes, just the other day, there was a movie that was put on Prime, and I'm thinking, all these years I thought a movie existed. I'm thinking, is this the Mandela effect where I'm thinking I actually watched a movie and 30 some years later, nobody knows what I'm talking about. And I found it was on Prime,
Nice.
and it was called The Being. It's not great, but I think the story and the way that was made with the limited budget, I think you kind of put yourself out there and just have fun watching these things. I don't go looking for, I'm not watching Casablanca here. I'm watching a good B movie
Right.
and having a lot of fun. So with that, so what are some of the ones that you enjoyed watching growing up, or even now as adults? Because we're still watching this stuff.
We are still watching those things. I like some of the lower budget ones. I mean, you look at some of the modern ones that have had success that were low budget, like Terrifier, right? That wasn't, a multi-billion-dollar effort by Hollywood. But for me, I'm a little bit older than you. Shh, don't tell everybody how old I am. But I grew up in the front seat of a station wagon watching black and white movies with my mother, because in a drive-in theater, because my father hated horror movies. My mom didn't want to go alone, so I was weaned on this stuff. So things like them, or I really like a lot of the 50s and 60s kind of movies that have some monster results from experimentation or from nuclear fallout. I mean, whether it's Godzilla or giant ants or leeches or whatever the case may be, I kind of like a lot of them. But for more modern stuff, not necessarily B-rated movies, I think my favorite that I go back to and watch maybe once a year is The Hills Have Eyes, one of Wes Craven's first movies. And on an interesting side note, this last show at Horror on Main, Dee Wallace was there, and she was in that movie. A lot of people know her from Cujo or E.T. or whatever. For me, it was The Hills Have Eyes, and I couldn't wait to go meet her in person. That was awesome.
It's not every day you get to meet some of the people, especially in movies that perhaps didn't get the right kind of, I don't know if the right kind of it didn't trend as well.
Right.
But when I start watching some of these older movies, I just watched it the other night. It had Jeff Conway,
Okay.
and I believe he was he in Taxi, or
Yes,
I
he
want to.
was. Yeah.
This is a movie called Funhouse. It 1980-81, and is as BSB can get, just like Ghoulies, where they had Mariska Hargitay. She later became very famous with Law and Order. So there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of value in going back and watching these movies and seeing how people got their start.
Indeed. That's one of the things I like also about looking at old Twilight Zone episodes. You see some actors that you recognize from later on down the line. I mean, like, seeing Captain Kirk or Spock from Star Trek in an earlier, Twilight Zone episode, or what, you're like, wait a minute, I recognize him,
And didn't they remake The Hills Have Eyes? Was there a remake?
There was a remake, and I think there was a number 2 as well. I mean, but I always harken back to the original one for me.
Right. The Hills Even Have More Eyes.
The
Part
Hills
2.
Have
I think it's
More Eyes, right? And of course, what's funny about that, now that we're talking about The Hills Have Eyes, is I told you that I grew up, liking the nuclear related monsters. And here, The Hills Have Eyes, really it is monsters created because of nuclear fallout. Now, the monsters are human, and their issues are related by radiation, but we still have monsters created by atomic energy, nuclear testing and so forth. So I think being weaned on that, I really love that stuff.
Yeah, I do the same. It's not only a lot of fun, but sometimes it almost like you're just opening a time capsule. You kind of feel like that one kid's still watching at home. I had a black and white TV probably well into the late 80s. I mean, we couldn't afford a color TV, but I think it was more fun watching it that way. I don't know about you, but I think it was.
Oh, yeah, I definitely think it's more fun that way. I mean, I'm so used to now to 4K color, right? but I still love going back. You get Roku, or you go look on YouTube or other places. You can find all kinds of old black and white movies to watch. Many of them that are still they're available for free because they're no longer copyrighted. Because they're old enough or whatever. The copyright ran out or whatever. But I mean, like, before I went to explore Slovakia last summer, I watched Nosferatu, and then I went to the Nosferatu castle, the 1922 version, which was before, the new movie came out. So, I'm watching the old black, and that one is even a silent movie on top of that. So, I mean, that's not just black and white. It's just music with words printed on the screen.
And that'd be a little challenging in today's time to really kind of to get it. But I think if you're there from the start watching these things, I think you it's kind of like radio. Back in the old radio plays, you couldn't see them, but you had to hear them. So you had to really get lost in that story during the radio play, kind of like a theater for your mind.
Right.
And then you spoken about you were exploring in Europe, right?
I was.
And
I like to do that.
well, I know, but let me ask this question because you're there, and I'm sure other people have said it, but I've only heard it from you. Dark tourism.
Dark tourism.
What is dark tourism? Because you visit some of very interesting locations.
I do visit interesting locations. Dark tourism is kind of, for lack of a better term, is going to places where there's a serious dark history to them. Something really bad has happened there, or suspected to have happened there, I guess, for lack of a better term. So some examples would be like, there's a place in Japan called the Suicide Forest. People will go there to check it out because it's supposed to drive people to suicide while they're in there, because of the silence and the overwhelming, I guess, pressure of the trees or whatever. I don't know. I've never been to that one specifically, but going to a concentration camp, for example, is kind of considered dark tourism. Another example might be when I went to the exclusion zone and explored, Chernobyl and Pripyat that were destroyed by, nuclear meltdown in reactor 4. So you're going to places where things have happened, bad things have happened, where maybe there's a residual energy left over from what had happened there. Maybe it could be the Battle of Little Bighorn or in a massacre site somewhere, where something's happened. So, and they're typically off the beaten path. It's not like most of these places don't have busloads of tourists going to them. It's not the Washington Monument or the San Francisco Bay Bridge or Big Ben in London or something like that. So they're a little easier to get around without tons of people on top of you.
And you also, some of these locations are mostly like historical markers or museums or something that the state or the government has put out there for the general public they can visit.
Yes.
But you also go a little bit off the beaten path to places, abandoned places, or I'll say non-state sponsored places. Where have you been lately?
Where have I been lately? I don't know if I've been anywhere interesting lately. When I was in Slovakia, I had hired a driver so I could do my own thing, but taking me around to different sites. Anytime I saw a ruin on top of a hill, I would have them stop and I would climb up the hill to the castle ruin. So they're not like maintained, they're not state sponsored, or there's no ticket entry. You climb the hill and you explore this abandoned piece of history that's sitting there. So on my upcoming trip, I'm going to be, on the trail of an Irish cryptid. So most of my searching is going to be in lakes and very rural parts of Connemara and County Mayo and various islands off the coast, where I probably won't even see any other people while I'm out there. There's no markers, there's no state tourism. It's not like Loch Ness. Loch Ness has a whole cottage industry built around it. Mothman has a whole cottage industry built around it. I'm chasing a cryptid that doesn't have an industry, right? So I'm going to be in places where there aren't other people.
And sometimes that's better, I think, because now you don't have to deal with crowds. You don't have to deal with people going to places and disrespecting the location or just bothering you while you're trying to do your own exploration.
Right. I love it. I definitely love the privacy. It gives you a little bit of peace of mind, but you can focus on what you're trying to do. So, I think I'm more at home with cryptids than I am people.
I mean, and I can completely understand that, my friend. But and in the spirit of the same question I asked earlier, because I know you're talking about, exploring these locations, but sometimes when you go to these places, do you ask the locals anything? Have they given up any information that perhaps you wouldn't have known?
I have in a few places here and there, but a lot of the places are kind of off the grid. I mean, they're on maps. I don't mean that they're off the grid that way, but they're not like in urban areas or even residential areas. They're like outside of farms, outside of towns, and you don't really run across a lot of people. I have asked some people about a few things here and there, and trust me, if I run across anybody in Ireland this year and near one of these sites, I'm going to ask them questions whether or not they've seen or heard about any sightings of this creature. So, it kind of depends, but most of the time I don't run across people.
But I think that kind of adds to the eeriness of what it is that you're doing.
Yes. And imagine, I mean, I'm hoping that I hear or see something, but imagine how creepy that might be if you're alone when that happens. You can't turn to Diego and say, "Hey, did you hear that?" I mean, it's just me and the noise, right?
No, I will not be there. I'll have to wait till you get back. You tell me about these stories. Although I would go, but I don't know if I'm not gonna graduate to going to Europe at this present time or anywhere, because I'm in here in West Virginia. There's so many places here.
Man, you are lying. I'm headed out in West Virginia on August 1st. The Killer Bees and I are doing a show in Philippi, Lurch Fest of all things like that. If you don't like the Addams Family, we can't even talk, right? But the day before that, I have gotten myself a ticket where I can go explore the abandoned Shawnee amusement park that's supposed to be haunted, kind of in the southwestern end of the state somewhere. I've never been there before. I've always kind of wanted to, so I'm going to since I don't have to be in Philippi until Saturday, I'm going to spend Friday driving out there to explore this place and then head back north towards Philippi, But you're right, there's so much to do and see in West Virginia. The Appalachian lore it's everywhere. I mean, just in a short area of distance, you've got a Bigfoot museum and the Flatwoods Monster Museum that are 2 blocks from each other, roughly in Sutton. So you're not far from the Grafton Monster. There's a lot of stuff going on in West Virginia.
There is. The state is much bigger than what it looks like on the map.
Yes, it is. Right on the map, it looks like it's something little, but it could take you 8 hours to get across different parts of it.
Absolutely true. I try to stay closer to this area because we've already, just if I go down to Harper's Ferry, you can spend there all day just on the paranormal in itself.
Right. Oh, hey, but you're close to your buddy Snarly, like the cryptid and the person.
That's right. And I've seen Snarly many times, and that is a real deal. That is a real person.
Yeah.
And nice as can be, of course. And Lurch Fest. I'm curious now. What is Lurch Fest?
So apparently, the original Addams Family TV series from the 60s, the guy who played Lurch, I want to say his name was Ted Cassidy. Off the top of my head, I'm probably screwing it up. Cassidy, I think for sure. I'm not 100% sure on the first name. But at any rate, he was either from Philippi or else he ended up moving there and made it like his town. If you go into the main building, like a historical museum kind of thing in town, the reason we stopped there, the Killer Bees, we stopped there on our way to do some ghost hunting at Trans-Allegheny, right? So we go in there and to see 2 mummies. They have 2 mummies inside this building, but we didn't know that there was any kind of tie to the Addams Family or Lurch until we walked in the building. And there's like a 7-foot statue of Lurch inside where you get a ticket to the museum. I'm like, well, what's up with Lurch? And of course, they explained it to us. And we were there like 2 weeks after Lurch Fest had ended last year. We're like, oh, well, we have to come back and see what's up with Lurch Fest. And so it's apparently it's an all day thing. It starts at like 10 o'clock on Saturday and goes until 10 o'clock at night. And, they've got live bands going. They've got all kinds of everything Lurch and Addams Family apparently going on. And then they close the night with fireworks and stuff. So I've never been, but I'm kind of excited about it after we ran across the statue of Lurch just by accident.
That's what you get for exploring. Sometimes positive things happen. And with Addams Family, I didn't watch it as much as a kid. And I hope you and I cannot stop being friends after this, but I like the Munsters.
Oh, I like the Munsters too.
And I think it was a little more kid friendly, but did they ever, because I know with the Munsters, they made I think it was in the 80s, late 80s, and they tried to, I think it was called the Munsters Today. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did they ever do anything like that with the Addams Family?
Not that I know of, and I know the one you're talking about. The colorized Munsters was a little weird for me. I kind of harkened back to the old, black and white one myself. But the Addams Family did have a handful of spin-off movies. And of course, now they have the Netflix series, at least that's where I've watched it. I don't know if they're the ones that produced it or not, but Wednesday, a whole series about Wednesday Addams. And I think season 2 is getting ready to come out anytime this summer. I don't know exactly the drop date, but I don't think they tried to colorize and do an 80s version of it like they did on the Munsters. Or if they did, I totally missed it.
Oh, I don't even think it did a season, but
yeah.
It wasn't the same. I know, yeah.
You know that Herman's buried here near us. Herman Munster, Fred Gwynn. He's buried in Maryland.
Interesting. No, I did not know that. I liked his role in My Cousin Vinny, man. He did great.
Yeah, oh yeah, he was great. I liked him in reruns of Car 54 as well. Like that goes back, but actually the guy that played Grandpa Munster was in that same series with him in Car 54.
Yeah, sometimes I think that happened a lot back then too. You see a lot of these folks that worked with each other down the road. They still did a lot of projects, movies, or skits with each other.
Right.
Is I think that some of that does still happen to this day, but you touched on something and it escaped my mind. I know we're talking Maryland, we're talking the Munsters, and I don't know where my mind went, but let's talk about your new book. Once I get back on my train on the tracks again, a couple weeks ago, you gave me an autographed copy of your book. I'm very thankful for that. And what's the title of the book? And where I know you're gonna be at Lurch Fest. I know you're gonna be in other locations. Where can the fans find out more about your book?
Well, I think you have the links you're going to throw up on the podcast, so they can find me at the website, Amazon.com or whatever. I don't know if you can see this. Whoops.
Beyond the Pale.
Beyond the Pale, that's the name of it. But hey, the same day that I brought that out, I got a signed copy of this one right here.
Oh yeah.
Nobody's talking about this one here, but I remember The Crib by Diego the Podcaster. So hey, you know what? I appreciate anybody that supports and wants to go out and read my book, but pick up Diego's too. So fair play, brother. Fair play.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. And it's one of those, probably one of the scariest things I ever had to do. And I know it's old hats to you writing, but it's one of those things that I wrote it. It sat on my hard drive for 2 months. So I don't want to release it. And it took my wife says, you got to. You already said the publishers are already waiting for it.
Right.
And go ahead and did it. And then once I released it, it felt great.
Yeah, but it did.
Yeah. So let's talk.
And where's number 2 at? Come on with the sequel, bro.
It's also in my hard drive right now. It's a slow process for that one. But let's talk about your new book. What do we come to find out in that one?
So, as you know, that I had not really been writing a lot for the last couple of years because of nerve damage and problems with my hands, right? So over the course of, the last year, I had multiple surgeries and where I can start using my hands pretty normally now. They're probably a good 90% back to normal. And I felt like since I hadn't released anything really, really new other than being in some anthologies or putting out a collection of stuff that already, had been really written, but, wasn't new really for me. I wanted to get something done and out the door just for my own mental health. Like you felt that moment when you released I Remember the Crib. Well, I needed that moment in my life, like to in some ways get rid of imposter syndrome. Like I gotta say I'm a writer, but I'm not writing anything, right? So I put together, 10 quick stories and threw them out into the universe. And actually, I'm quite pleased with them. The reviews so far have all been positive. There's a couple of stories in there that are like people's favorites. They say Audrey's Leg and New Glasses seem to be the 2 leading candidates for the favorite stories so far, but I had a lot of fun with it. It's kind of Twilight Zone-ish, Outer Limits kind of stuff. It's not gore, it's not body horror and things like that. It's not super duper bloody or anything like that. So it's kind of, well, like the subtitle says, Macabre Tales by Bryn Grover. It's kind of macabre and twisty little Twilight Zone-ish type of stories, at least from my perspective.
I'm interested in the title you just mentioned, Audrey's Leg. Don't give a spoiler, but what's I need to know.
So Audrey's Leg, it's hard not to give a spoiler when you're talking about a short story because they're not super long. But Audrey's Leg is, how about I start by giving you some background on where the inspiration comes from?
Perfect.
Audrey's Leg is a little bit about an amputation from an accident. So the inspiration for this is I have a cousin who's, maybe 10 days younger than me. I don't really remember exactly when his birthday is, and I haven't seen him in decades probably. But he had gotten into a motorcycle accident when we were maybe 17, 18 years old, something like that. And his leg was crushed and he had to have his foot amputated. Later on, there was additional amputations because of, infections or other things going on. So, and over the course of his life, he had multiple cuts right on his leg. So that was kind of somewhat of the inspiration between this and this story. We have a lady named Audrey who's been in an accident and she's having her foot amputated, but it's not for exactly the same types of reasons that it happened to my cousin or to other people. There's more going on behind the scenes, and the twist comes at the end without me telling you what the twist is. It's not strictly medical necessity, so to speak. Let me put it that way.
Oh man, I'm more no. It's already sounds in my mind. I can only say, "Oh my goodness, what could it be?" Now I really have to dig down into that story, as I will be reading your book tonight because it's reading night. Saturday
It
night
is,
is
oh,
always
there you
reading
go.
night.
And it's a quick read because I wanted to get something else so bad. This is 10 stories and it's only like 60 pages. So it's a fast read. And even if you only read one or two stories at a time, it's easy to sit down and pick back up later on. It's not like you're going to miss anything by taking a break in between.
And I like to pace myself too. Like if I read a book that's got 12, 15 short stories, 10, I'll read a couple each night. But mostly I like to do most of my reading on a Saturday. But I almost hate to finish the book.
Yeah, I get that. I do that a little bit with short story books too. I'll read one or two and put it aside, and then I'm reading something else, and I'll come back and read another one. And I think that's the beauty of it is if you're an ADHD kind of reader like I am, and I've got 30 different books going at any given time, it's easy to read a story and put it aside without feeling like I need to go back and reread something else to catch up to wherever I was when I left off.
Yeah, my kind of how my Kindle looks like
Oh
right
yeah, I
now.
understand that. Kindle paperbacks, both for me.
Yeah, that bookmark's working overtime sometimes. But in transitioning to a different type of story writing, my friend, I know that you also write poetry as well. Uh, how do you balance these two things? I think I would I can only imagine because I don't know much about poetry, but I think I'd be more stressed writing a poem than I would actually writing a story. I don't know if that's true on your end, but I wouldn't know what to do.
I don't know if it's true on my end. The thing is that I'm not the kind of poet, so to speak, that most modern poets are. Like I kind of my brain kind of thinks in an old school poetic manner, kind of like I'm reading Tennyson or Emily Dickinson or something, where you have like an 8/8 count with the rhyming, like Emily Dickinson, for example, because he could not stop for me. You know, now my brain stopped working. I know the words of this poem, I forgot it. But it basically her poem about death is just back and forth and forth, and like Kubla Khan by Coleridge. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree. So I kind of write at that kind of 8/8 up and down pace with rhymes, and my brain just thinks that way. When I try to write more modern style, that's where I have problems trying to write poetry. So when I do write it, I write it with what's already just is embedded in my mind. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
Now it's because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves in immortality. I know the words, I'm just couldn't get them out for Emily Dickinson, but that's the kind of way my brain thinks when I am writing. So originally my writing started when I was like, for poetry at any rate, when I was like 8 years old and there was a cute girl down the street. Didn't get me no date or nothing, but I mean, that's how it goes. So over the years, it's really a lot of it has been, romantically inclined for my wife. That's kind of like my love language and my courting, so to speak, right? I'm not the guy who's going to rebuild the roof. I'll hire somebody to rebuild the roof, but I do poetry. But because I write horror, I started combining the two, which is why I have the one book of horror poetry.
right in that one, Catacombs.
Right.
How long ago did that come out?
I want to say it was last year, but most of the stuff had already been written, so it was kind of like I just had to put them all together and get it edited and get it out the door because I wasn't like writing, right? Because I was still trying to deal with all my nerve issues in my hands. So, most of the stuff had already been written. It was already kind of in the works for a long time, but it was one of those things like your story sitting on the hard drive. The
Yeah.
stuff was just sitting there. And I'm like, oh, well, I can't really do much without pain, but I can spend, half hour here, half hour there trying to put it all together, get it out the door, so, and it felt good to do it because it was something new, to get out the door. And I had that aha moment, like you got.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie to you. Sometimes, speaking of having something stuck in a hard drive or on a notebook, there's times when I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to bed early, and my voice says, "You should be writing that book.
Right.
You could have wrote 1 or 2 pages. Why can't you do it? Why are you so lazy?" And I get all myself amped up, and then yet again, I'm back where I started. But from my last conversation with you, and you gave me some really good um, advice. You kind of helped me. I don't know if it's a strategy or something, but you told me here's what you do, and then like, okay, I'm gonna do what Brian says. I think it's gonna work for me this time. It's just I gotta fight myself, and that's the biggest thing. But it'll get done. Putting that to the side because before we go, I don't want to let this one go by me. Because in the bio that you sent me, when I wrote the intro, the Bunnyman. Have you been to Bunnyman Bridge?
I have been to Bunnyman Bridge, and interestingly enough, um, one of the books that Brian and I are both in is called Dark Corners of the Old Dominion, which was done for the charity Scares That Care. And Snarly supports them at his events too, so you're familiar with that charity. Um, it's basically stories that take place in Virginia, all of the stories. Um, my piece in that book is really just a poem, the Bunnyman of Clifton, right? Because it takes place, most of the legends take place here in Clifton, Virginia, in Northern Virginia. And so when the book came out, I took the book over to the bridge, the Colchester Bridge in Clifton, and I'm underneath the bridge, and I'm taking a picture of the book at the location where the story takes place. So yes, I have been there, and it's kind of weird. I mean, you work in Northern Virginia, this area is very congested. Colchester Bridge feels like it's in the middle of nowhere, even though it's Northern Virginia. There's farms, it's all country roads winding. It's very weird for this part of the state, which is so overgrown and congested that it just seems out of place.
Very true, because you could be in a city 1 minute, wait 10 minutes, you see a farm. You're not
Right.
lying there. So one of the stories about Bunnyman that I can remember, and there's two actually, but I'll talk about one because then I'm also I don't want to spoil anything in case anybody wants to go out there and explore. There was a couple. Uh, they were for some reason I don't know. He was driving his girlfriend and his wife somewhere, and they stopped somewhere in that area, and not like the classic horror movies where a couple sit there, they make out, there's a monster or something happens to them. We all know that classic formula. Nothing like that,
Right.
but it was to the point to where they pull over somewhere. I think he was trying to get directions, and there was a dude that came out there with a hatchet, dressed as a bunny in a bunny man outfit, and basically threatened to kill them because they were trespassing. I think there's a few stories about that. It usually revolves around somebody trespassing on someone's property. A man dressed in a bunny outfit. It could
Yep.
be an axe, a hatchet, a machete. Pick your poison. There's always threatening them to get out.
Right. One of the older stories goes back to says that there was somebody who had whoever was wearing the bunny costume had escaped from a mental institution. So there's a handful of stories, but I know, when I was first learning how to drive, and maybe a little bit before that, you're 15, 14, whatever time frame. It used to be the kind of legend people would tell to try to make kids stay together. Like, don't go out in the dark alone. The bunny man might get you. Like, at least in Northern Virginia, right? I mean, other areas maybe have their own monsters and urban legends, but in Northern Virginia, the bunny man was the boogeyman that you used to try to keep your kids in line.
Yeah, and it doesn't help because it seems like there were reports back in the day of, I think, up to the 80s, I believe, right? That there was
Yes.
some, yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't be messing around the woods either. But in Virginia, though, it's one of those weird things. I think it's within the last 10 years. I think there was a big thing where I think they were copying something that was going on either in England or in France, where these people would dress up as clowns, just hang out in the middle of the street and scare the bejesus out of people, right?
Right.
And they started doing that in Virginia, and I think it got to a point where I think they actually now did they pass a law that nobody can dress up like a clown in public?
I don't know. I haven't heard that, but I do remember. I remember the trend that you're talking about. People would just stand on street corners, dressed as a clown, freaking people out. I mean, it probably didn't help none that they had. I mean, if it started in England, that sounds correct from my memory, but it probably didn't help none that they also had the reissue of the It series, right? So it brought Pennywise to a whole new generation, and of course you've got the Terrifier movies and Art the Clown. So that the clowns are almost a trope in horror. All right, so I can see a lot of things behind that.
Yeah, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they passed some sort of, I don't know if it was the towns, because towns and states would all have different laws,
Right.
different little things. But I believe that it's within the last 10 years or something that you just can't do that now. I think you get a ticket or a night in jail or something, but it's not a great thing for those unless that's your job, dressing up as clowns to
Right.
entertain the children or have some sort of a show. But no, I knew you would know about that, my friend. So now, before we go, I know you're going to go to Lurch Fest not too in August. How's the rest of your year looking?
I do have the WPAK's Cryptid event the end of September in Johnstown, and I think Snarly's at that one too. I expect, I haven't got 100% confirmation, but I expect to see both of you guys at Cryptid Halloween in October, and then probably Krampus in December. But I'm kind of taking it a little bit easy because, I got other travel going on. I got to go hunt my cryptid in Ireland in September, right? So, I got a lot of other things on the schedule as well. But Lurch Fest will be me and Brian. The Killer Bees will be there August 2nd. And then I think probably not till the end of September before I do another show.
Yeah, and I always see you out there. You and the Killer Bees are the busiest author tag team I ever seen ever, and you guys put in the great work. You guys are great to talk to because long before you and I became friends, I used to go to the events, and you always catch me and say, "Hey, man, you want to be on my show?" And then you guys are always very friendly and always willing to talk to anybody that comes over to the tables, and so I really appreciate that about both of you, and I really appreciate you coming back on the show to share your stories and then talk about your works and your love of B-movie horror. And I think one day we're just going to have a show, you and I, B-movie marathon. We're going to talk about all the ones that we love.
Hey, let's do it.
Awesome, my friend. Hey, thank you so much for being on the show, and I'll see you in a couple of months.
You will indeed. If not sooner, we can catch up again at lunch or something.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you very much.
All content on this broadcast is a property of Diego the Podcaster and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, Diego the Podcaster, or Bonus Overdrive Wednesday. The information shared on Bonus Overdrive Wednesday is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.